This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. This is not my closet full of everything I love. We're shooting al dente today. And you know, it's always interesting to see a film as an adult that really scared you as a kid. And that's what I want to talk about today. It's a film that freaked me out when I saw it as a kid growing up in the 60s. I just watched it again, and what do I think about it now? It's totally ridiculous. And I loved every minute of it. Well, let's check it out. The film in question today is Frankenstein's Daughter. This is from 1958, 90 minutes long, beautiful black and white, and there's just so much I want to say about this film. But let's talk about first why it scared me as a kid growing up in the 60s, watching it on a Saturday night on my black and white TV. And I think first of all, they showed the monster right away, even before the title of the film showed up. And usually a lot of these monster films, you had to wait until the film was almost half over before you even saw the monster. So right away you saw the monster. And this is what she looked like. Well, one of the monsters. This is what quote unquote Frankenstein's daughter looked like right here. Ignore this for now, that's later. And that's her right there. And the freaky thing is, well, she looks freaky, but the other freaky thing is that she was on walking down the street, on a suburban street, in regular clothes, like a nightgown. And then later on in the film, she's hiding behind a bush next to a house, which is probably the same suburban street. Now, why'd that freak me out? Because it looks like a street in the San Fernando Valley where I grew up, and I was just a kid at the time, and I'm looking at this thinking, well, that looks just like my street. She could be outside my door. That bush next to that house looks like the bush next to my house. She could be standing right there. So that was freaky. Now, what is this thing about? Well, Frankenstein's Daughter is about, there's this old professor, and he wants to make some sort of elixir that gets rid of all disease for all mankind using something called Degeneron. He has an assistant named Mr. Frank. Get it? Mr. Frank. And then he has a niece living with him also. The assistant lives with him too. And the niece is named Trudy. There's a name you don't hear very often anymore. And this guy, Mr. Frank, is continuing his grandfather and his father's experiments because his real name is Mr. Frankenstein. And so he's trying to create life from dead body parts as well. The old man doesn't know about it. And by the way, Mr. Frank is giving a potion to Trudy, the mad professor's niece, and she is transformed into this. There's never any reason given why he's doing that to her, because he's also making the regular monster from the dead body parts in the laboratory. So why he's doing this to her is never explained. Now, this director was named Richard E. Cunha. He actually was from Hawaii, and when Pearl Harbor was bombed, he decided, well, I need to join the war effort. He joined the service, ended up working on newsreels in the service. Then after World War II, he started working in the film business. So what happened with Frankenstein's Daughter was the distributor gave the director and his partner, his producing partner, $80,000 and a title, Frankenstein's Daughter. Go make this movie. So they made the movie in 6 days. They brought it under budget at $60,000, pocketed the extra $20,000. The cast is, who knows? The guy who plays the old man is terrible. And actually, if you look on his IMDb page, he has quite a few credits. He didn't start acting until he was 78 years old. But his line delivery and his acting is just awful. The guy who plays Mr. Frank, he's not bad. There's a guy named John Ashley, and he's sort of like an Elvis Presley wannabe. He's in there, and there's a little feature about him too. He's pretty terrible. The woman who plays the monster I just showed you, she is pretty good, actually. Her name is Sandra Knight, and she was once married to Jack Nicholson. So, interesting cast. Why is this ridiculous now? Well, you have this guy, Mr. Frank, who says, don't call me Frankenstein. And he wants to make a female monster. And the old man has no idea what's going on, of course, totally clueless. And there's a character named Elsu, but I'm just going to call him Igor, because he's basically an Igor character. And Igor walks around and he says, I worked with your grandfather, I worked with your father. They never made a woman before. You're going to make a woman? That's unheard of. To which me and anybody who knows anything about this had one reaction, and that was, have you ever heard of the Bride of Frankenstein? Okay? Your grandfather made a woman already. And it's the Bride of Frankenstein. And yet they keep saying throughout Frankenstein's daughter, I can't believe you made a woman, that nobody's ever made a woman. It's like, here it is. Even weirder is that the director was a fan of these old Universal monster films. He knew Bride of Frankenstein existed, and yet he kept it in the script anyways. Just one of the many odd things about this film. So they make this female monster, and that's the female monster. I don't know about you, but that doesn't look like a female to me. In fact, it's supposed to be this girl, Susie, who's like a blonde bombshell in this film, who is one of Trudy's friends. By the way, all the teens in this film look like they're about 35 years old. So they make this. Now, and they keep referring to, isn't she beautiful? She's magnificent. It's obviously a guy. In fact, real trivia here, if you've ever seen Some Like It Hot, that scene near the beginning where George Rath and his mobsters go into the speakeasy and it gets busted. He's one of the mobsters in that film. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I know that guy. Is he the guy in Some Like It Hot who stands up and they think he's drinking whiskey and he holds up his glass and he says, it's buttermilk. So if you really know that film, which I used to use Some Like It Hot in my film class, calling it, is this the greatest comedy ever made? And that's the guy. So why are they referring to this guy as a woman? Well, what happened was they gave the makeup guy the script. And in the original script, it was a male monster. They changed it to a female monster, didn't tell the makeup guy, so he made a mask for a guy. And then by the time it got to filming, they had no money or no time to change it, so they just kept it a guy, and they referred to this guy as a female because they couldn't change the mask, they couldn't change anything. So it's just one of many bizarre, weird, funny things about this film. And by the way, the monster walks like this, like a robot, and he's so slow that people just have to stand there and wait for him to attack them. It's just incredible. So you have the teens, like I mentioned, who are like 35 years old. Then, because there were films coming along at this time, like I Was a Teenage Werewolf and I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. So I guess to compete with that, they had to try to appeal to the young crowd, the young cool kids. So there's two musical numbers in here outside of a pool. The pool, by the way, was the backyard of the director's house. And there's two musical numbers by a group called what's his name? Pete Kavanaugh and this trio. And they're just terrible. And the drummer's, in fact, always looking at the camera. And they're just terrible. They're playing these crappy rock and roll wannabe songs. One's something like, I have a date, it's going to be great. I don't want to be late because I have a date. That's basically what it is. And then not only is there one musical number, there's two terrible musical numbers in this film. And the second musical number, Susie's boyfriend is an actor who was actually Harold Lloyd Jr., the son of the famous silent film comedian. And he sings the second one. The whole thing is just bizarre. And at the end, even though Susie's head was used as the monster because this guy, Mr. Frank, took her out, and he's like total sexist. In fact, he even says, we're going to use a female head and a female brain for the monster because females live in a man's world, so they're conditioned to take orders. Okay? That's just one of the many sexist things he says and does. So he takes Susie out on a date, almost basically tries to rape her. She runs away. He drives his car and runs her over with his car, takes her head, brings it back to the laboratory, puts it on the monster's head. And anyways, at the end, the teens are all happy again because everything is resolved, and the bad guys are punished, and they're happy, but nobody ever says anything about, well, what about Susie? And they're not sad that Susie's gone, and makes no sense. And speaking of making no sense, there's a guy who's a police lieutenant, and he's getting these calls. There's a monster that was seen in a nightgown walking down the street. Okay, I'll send a car right away. He hangs up the phone and sits back down and talks to his friend, as the other police detective. This happens like 3 or 4 times where he takes a call. He's like the only guy in the station. He takes a call, says he'll get right on it, and then does nothing. So it's just amazing. Anyways, I had so much fun with this film, I can't tell you. And in fact, I want to also mention this book called We Belong Dead, Frankenstein on Film. Now, if you are a real monster fan or a Frankenstein fan or both, you know what We Belong Dead refers to. And it's all about films about Frankenstein. So I thought, as I was getting ready for this video, I thought, let me see if they talk about Frankenstein's daughter in this book. I'll be surprised if they do, because there's a lot of Frankenstein films that are really good, actually, and there's just so many of them. 3 pages about Frankenstein's daughter in this book, so I was pretty impressed. So if you're really into this, I recommend this book. And this is on the label, The Film Detective. I've heard of the label. I never had anything by them before, so I'm really impressed with this one. I like the black case they use. I like the graphics in the front. There's this booklet that I showed some pictures of. It's a pretty short booklet, but it's fun. There's a commentary, and there's a little feature about that guy, John Ashley, the Elvis Presley wannabe guy. And there's also a feature about 30 minutes long on the director. Now, this guy named Tom Weaver, who writes a lot about horror and is on a lot of these DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff, he sent a list of questions to the director about the film. And what the director did was he videotaped him and his producing partner answering the questions. So I thought it was pretty cool. And one thing I do want to mention is these special features have English subtitles. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but sometimes I'm watching this late at night. I don't want to wake anybody up. And so I don't want to turn the sound up too much, so the subtitles came in real handy. And usually these special features have no subtitles. This one does. I'm going to give this film 4 zombies out of 5. Now, there's no zombies in here, but this little, whatever you call it, emoticon or whatever it is the closest I could get to a female monster. And now, why am I giving this 4? Because I've given films like my last episode, I gave the film All the President's Men 3.5. So no, I'm not saying this is a better film than that. I'm just basing this on its own merits as it is in a vacuum. How can you compare this to that All the President's Men? That's ridiculous, right? So just based on how much fun I had watching this, the nostalgia factor, and just how entertaining it was, I'm going to give it 4. By the way, it also looks really good, and it sounds fine too. So I told you what's on the disc, and where can you see this? Well, you can always rent it, you can always buy it. You can try your local library. You might even try YouTube if you really want to, even though I think it might be a public domain title. So it might be on YouTube. It probably looks pretty bad, but anyways, that's it. So, a lot of fun with Frankenstein's daughter. I'm real happy with this one. Let me know what you think. Maybe there's some films out there that you saw as an adult that freaked you out as a kid, or maybe there's some films that are just so bad that you really love them. Feel free to leave a comment or a suggestion down here. Feel free to leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Share this with your monster fan friends and neighbors. Otherwise, hope you like this one. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you next time.